You are listening to the Keep the Weight Off podcast with Dr. Angela, episode number 107.
Welcome to the Keep the Weight Off podcast, where we bust all the dieting myths and discover not just how to lose weight, but more importantly, how to keep it off. We go way beyond the food, and we use science and psychology to give you strategies that work. And now your host, Dr. Angela Zechmann.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the podcast this week. Marshall, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm awesome. We have spent this last weekend in Cannon Beach, and it has been just so much fun and so restful. And I've been doing some reflections, which I will talk about. But we have a room like right over the water, like viewing. For those of you who aren't familiar with Cannon Beach, Oregon, there's a big rock and it's called Haystack Rock, and our room looks right over it. So it is spectacular. And you can always hear the ocean waves. And I went yesterday for a run on the beach, which was just absolutely exhilarating.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Gosh,
It's been great. So, usually March in the Pacific Northwest can be kind of cold and rainy. And we just kind of came here expecting to just sort of sit in our hotel room next to the fire and listen to the rain, but it wasn't raining. It was great.
That would have been wonderful too. I would have been okay with that even.
I know.
I just love being by the ocean, whatever weather you get. So,
yeah.
That's wonderful.
So it was great. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about my birthday, which is coming up this week. And I like to do some reflections at the time of my birthday. And now this year's birthday is going to be a little bit different for me because, Marshall, you might remember that I was born on my mom's birthday, right?
Yes, I do remember. Yes.
Yeah. And so every year we have a double celebration. It's mom's birthday and my birthday. And so my entire life,
I do remember that. Mm-hmm.
Of course, when I was younger, it was always, she always was like, paid no attention to herself. And then as I got older and she got older, I always mostly paid attention to her, especially after my dad died. I wanted to make sure that she was that we were always together on our birthdays. And the only time that we weren't was in 2020 because remember the pandemic hit, there was a lockdown starting March 13th in 2020 and our birthday's the 23rd.
Yeah.
And so we had this great big 90th birthday plan and we couldn't do it. We had to do it over Zoom. So that was the only time that we didn't have our birthday together.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember when you guys had to do that.
Yeah. So this year my mother passed in September at the age of 92. But this year is going to be the first year that I don't have my mom on my birthday. So it feels a little bit just different. It feels sad. It feels weird. It feels different. So I'm just like, well, I'm hoping that, my mom spent 31 years without me. So I'm hoping that I can spend another 31 years too. That's the way my brain thinks anyway. If I make it to 92, then I'll have 31 years flying solo too. So I don't know. It's just an interesting way to think about it. Don't you think?
That is a really interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah.
And then we had 60 years with our birthdays together. And now I'll have another 31 years after that. That's just weird way my brain's thinking.
Yeah. And just like a quick little insert for just Angela's mom. I got to meet Angela's mom once, and it was just the most adorable little woman. I just couldn't keep my eyes off of her. She was, and she is so adorable. And I just loved her. I just fell in love with her just meeting her one time. So I was just honored to meet her one time. I'm glad I got to meet her.
Well, when you met her, she was struggling with dementia, and she would just sort of fall asleep. But she was just super cute.
Did. Yeah, she was adorable. I know.
Yeah. Well, she was definitely not sleepy most of my life. So just so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did tell me stories about that. So I know that she wasn't sleepy all the time. But when I met her, though, she was just an adorable old lady. I love old people. So
I know. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I just felt really happy that I got to meet her. So I have, a face to the name, and I can remember her too when you're talking about her, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So what am I thinking about other than that major thing on my birthday this year? So This will be my 61st trip around the sun. And
yeah, what else are you thinking about?
I know. It's like, well, one of the things that I'm really having to manage my mind around is this thought that there's not a lot of time left. And if I want to live a
Wait,
good, there's not a lot of time left. It's like 61, there's maybe another 30 years. If I follow my mom's footsteps, it's just 30 more years left. And so if I want to live a good life, I need to do everything possible to keep myself in the best health possible, So I think when we're younger, like in our 20s and 30s and maybe even 40s, we feel somewhat invincible and we don't worry so much about the long-term consequences of our behaviors. So
yeah, this is true.
I used to eat crap food constantly up until my 40s. I just ate crap all the time and I never gave it a second thought. And I think I thought I had a lot of leeway and plenty of time to rectify things if I started to notice that there were consequences to these behaviors. And, to a certain extent, I didn't even realize that it wasn't that good for me to be eating crap food all the time. But then as I aged, I began to realize, hey, you know what? I'm not headed in the right direction. I'm really struggling with food. I'm either binging or I'm dieting, and this is not healthy for my body. And if I want to live a good life for whatever remaining years I have left, I need to make some changes. And I think this idea that time is running out has been a huge motivator for change. And that might be why they say when you hit your 40s and 50s, you hit a sort of midlife crisis. It's like, whoa, suddenly you realize, you know what? I'm not immortal and time is running out. And if you don't like the way things are turning out, you need to make some changes now, right? So does that make sense, Marsha?
Right. Yeah. So I recently hit one of my milestones too. I mean, I turned 50 recently and I've done a lot worse than just eat crap food in my lifetime, guys. I mean, I indulged in a lot more than crap food. So, when I turned 50, my health was not where I wanted it to be. And I needed to really reevaluate, what I was doing with my lifestyle. And you and I both know that.
Yeah.
And so I had to make some major changes with how I was living my life. And I have done that.
Yeah.
And, I turned it around a lot. And and what's great is I feel better right now at 51 than I felt when I was in my 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Like I feel so much better.
Yeah.
And
me too.
I'm so glad that I know, right? I'm so glad that I did that.
Yeah.
And I just feel mentally better. I feel emotionally better, spiritually better, physically better.
Yeah.
And this just goes to show you guys, it's never too late to make a change. Don't ever think that you're too old. Don't ever think that, you're too broken or, too much stuff has happened to you. It's just not too late to turn things around because I did it when I was 50 years old.
Right.
And, I feel better now than I have, like I said, in most of my 20s and 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I was out running yesterday on the beach, like running in sand is not easy. It's like, whoa.
Gosh, no, it's not. Walking in sand or running in sand. I know, right?
I was kind of like down by closer to the water where the sand's a little firmer, but I was just really surprised at how good it felt, and I'm almost 61 years old and I'm out there running. I just felt
that's wonderful.
So
that's great that you can do that.
Yeah. I mean, it is possible to have a really wonderful, exhilarating physical experience in this world, regardless of how old you are. It just is. So,
right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed a lot of people come to see us and they're in that state, they're having these sorts of thoughts, like it might be a midlife crisis. It might be like, okay, I'm about to turn 40 and I've got to make some changes, or my 50th birthday's coming up, or I just turned 50 and I realize I don't want to live like this anymore. So it might be sort of a midlife crisis, but I think the word crisis might be a little bit dramatic in that sort of situation. But they've reached these ages where they're about to celebrate that milestone birthday, or maybe they've just lost a parent or a relative and they're thinking, I don't want to live that story, and they begin to think about their lives and they think, I don't want to go on living in this body that feels so heavy. I want to be able to move freely. I want my vitality back. I want my health back. And so these birthdays can be really motivating for people. it's like, hey, time's running out. I got to do this. So,
well, maybe crisis isn't the right word, but sometimes we have people that come in, that just had their first grandchild and they just got, some blood work back and it was not good.
Yeah.
And, they want to be around to, help raise or, to be in their grandchild's life. So, it's maybe not the midlife crisis, but, when you get that blood work back, you do like a physical and you get blood work back and you didn't realize that, maybe you had the high cholesterol or, your A1C is not good.
Right.
It kind of hits you, like right in the gut, literally that, you need to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I totally understand, that way, how things can just kind of sideswipe you when you start getting older that, you need to make a change.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the kinds of thoughts that I oftentimes will have around my birthdays. Like, how am I doing with my health? Am I where I want to be? And I think those are all like really, really helpful motivators, So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Another theme for me this year is, and it's going to continue, and it's always about finding balance. So finding the right balance between work and play and relationships and traveling and having fun, all of that. So I have,
That's great.
This watching me. I'm like a type A. I'm a real type A personality. I'm always working on something new. I'm taking a new class or I'm working on a new project. And I'm also focused on my own health and on my relationships. And sometimes it's kind of a tricky balance. So there's no question. It's like, but I think you can really reap some handsome rewards when you keep yourself and your own needs at the top of your list. So
I agree.
So for example, it's really, really rare that I ever give up my morning routine. So I have my morning routine pretty well honed down now. It includes meditation. It includes a vigorous workout. It includes getting showered and dressed and eating breakfast. All of this before I ever see even one patient. And I absolutely love my morning routine because it grounds me for the day and it gives me resilience. So people who know me well know that it's rare that anything ever bothers me very much, right? So
this is true. I can attest to that. It is it is very true, you guys.
The crap can hit the fan and I'm just pretty steady, So
it's true. Yes, you are.
Yeah. And so, we all have our moments. Like there have been times where I've kind of freaked out, but for the most part, I'm pretty steady. And I attribute that to my morning routine. So I've been honing that morning routine down and working at consistency with it over the last year. And like many people, I've been doing a lot more traveling this year. And even with travel, I've been really consistent with my morning routine. So that is one thing that I'm super, super proud of. So for our listeners, whenever your birthday is this year, I want you to bookmark this podcast and listen to it then again. Okay. And ask yourself, what are you most proud of that you've accomplished in this last year? So for me, it's my consistency with my morning routine. And that has really helped me improve my mental and emotional stability. So ask yourself, what are you most proud of having accomplished in the last year? Do you have anything, Marshall?
Okay. So, I've just come out with it. The thing that I'm most proud of is I gave up the bad habits that were basically going to kill me in the future. I guess, I gave up drinking, smoking, caffeine.
Yeah.
Negative thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those, I've been working on all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I've started going to therapy, worked on, my emotional health. And so I made some major changes in this last year that I'm super proud of.
Yeah, you should be.
So,
super proud.
some big changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for the record, I do want to say caffeine is not necessarily going to kill you, but some of these other things.
No, caffeine's not going to kill me, but it sure made me anxious. And then it made me think, too much. It just made me anxious and I didn't like the way it made me feel.
Yeah.
So, I always felt, like jittery and, I became really sensitive to it.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't, and I gave up sugar and flour as well.
Yeah.
I've had my setbacks with that because by far sugar sugar and flour is the hardest thing to give up out of all the things I've quit.
Yeah.
So, I'm still working on that. Like I said, I fall back on that here and there, but, that is something that I'm really determined to get a hold of or a handle on.
That's such a tough one.
So
yeah. And that's why we have our podcasts and our Facebook group and our Empowered Weight Loss membership, because people need support, that
really, really need support on that. It's really important to get, connected to a community for this kind of support, because you can't do it alone. Yeah. You just really can't do it alone. It's really super hard because the whole world is telling you otherwise. It wants you to eat this processed crap food. It's, it's what everybody's doing. It's where they make their money. The food industry makes their money.
Yeah.
And so it is really hard to do it alone. So it's so important to get connected with the community.
Yes.
And so that's what's helped me. And like I said, I fall back, but I never give up and I stay connected to my community. And that's helped me.
Yeah. So we have a community called Empowered Weight Loss. And so for those of you who are interested, it's journeybeyondweightloss.com/yes. And you can join our community there, where we're going to help you with developing all the skills you need to get off sugar and flour and stay off sugar and flour. So that's an option if you...
And it's so much more than that. And it's so much more than that, too.
Absolutely.
It's about your mental and emotional health. And it's just, dive into it. It has changed my life.
Yeah. All right. The next question that I ask myself. So the first question I ask myself is, what am I proud of having accomplished in the last year? The next question I ask myself is, what would I like to improve on in this next year? So think about this, those of you who are listening. Yeah. And for me, this is going to be organization. So I feel like I'm always working on organization because I can never find what I'm looking for. And it's interesting because sometimes people looking at me from the outside would be like, what are you talking about? You seem really well organized. But then if you just look at my desktop on my computer, it's a mess. My daughter's always laughing at me. It could be like, I'm always looking for things. So it could be something physical, like I'm trying to find a screwdriver or a pair of scissors or something like that. Or it could be something digital, like I can't find a document that I'm looking for or a picture that I need to email to someone. And so keeping things organized so that you can find them, it's just not one of my strong points. It never has been. And so that's something that I really want to improve on for this next year. So ask yourself, what would you like to improve on this next year? What would you like to be able to say next year on your birthday that you had accomplished in the last year? Do you have any thoughts about that, Marshall? It's not really your birthday, but you might have some thoughts.
I don't. I haven't really thought about that yet. Because I don't know. I'm just working on the things I'm working on. Yeah. And so when it gets closer to my birthday, I think I will listen to this podcast again.
Exactly.
And I'll make that decision.
Yeah. All right. The next question that I ask myself is, what am I most grateful for? And that's always a really powerful question. And what comes up,
I love this question.
I know. What am I most grateful? So what comes up for me are two things. The first is my relationships. And the second is my health. So I have really, really wonderful relationships. I have relationships with my daughters. I have relationships with my friends. I have relationships with coworkers and staff like you, both in the office and online. I have a whole online staff as well. I have a relationship with my boyfriend. I absolutely love relationships because even when things aren't perfect, I still love my relationships because they're a beautiful reflection back to me of how I'm feeling about myself. It's an interesting way to look at it. So I've noticed that if I'm feeling really, really good about myself and I'm loving myself and I'm respecting myself and I'm appreciating myself, that my relationships reflect that back to me. And that's the way the universe works. Have you noticed that, Marshall?
This is true. Yes, yeah. I have noticed this.
Yeah.
I didn't used to notice this. I didn't know this before, but you have actually taught me this.
Yeah. If you love and respect yourself, your relationships are going to reflect that. So if you're not being treated well by other people, the first thing that needs to happen is you need to ask yourself, how are you treating yourself? Do you love yourself? Do you take yourself seriously? Are you attuned to your own needs? Because if you can't do this for yourself, how could anyone else do it for you? Think about it like that.
Right.
Right? They're going to take the lead on how to treat you by watching how you treat yourself. So if you don't treat yourself respectfully, they'll take their cue and they won't either. Of course, this is all happening unconsciously, right? Like this is not something that is obvious.
Yeah.
But other people take their cue on how to treat you from how you're treating yourself. So you always want to be noticing, what are my relationships like? So I love my relationships because I love to check and make sure that they're humming along smoothly. And if they're not, then I know the first place to look to is myself. And I ask myself, how am I treating myself these days? If there's evidence that I'm not treating myself well, I work at correcting that before I start pointing fingers at somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is really empowering advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's super empowering. So, I think that's one thing that we as human beings tend to do if somebody is not treating us well, or if we feel like, people are taking advantage of us or whatever it is, our bosses aren't respecting us or whatever it might be.
Right.
We point fingers outside of to them and say, you need to treat me better. But the truth is that the most important thing we can do is to ask ourselves, how am I treating myself? And how is that being reflected back to me in the way other people are treating me? So
this is right.
That is really, really powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing that I'm super grateful for is my health. And, it's interesting because just a few weeks ago, I was playing tag with my teenage nephews and I was giving them a run for their money. Did I tell you about this?
I know you were telling me about that. Yeah. Yes, I love that. So you were so happy about this.
I know, we were at a park.
That's adorable.
And, they were playing, they play these silly games, and I wasn't even sure I understood the rules. I just knew that it was my job to catch them. So we had so much fun because I would kind of sneak up on them. And then I would be like, I'm going to get you. And then they'd be like, holy shit, she's right there. Like, and they'd take off and I would be like almost catching them. So it felt really great, that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's good.
Now I couldn't catch them, but I almost caught them. So it was great. And I was just like,
that feels good though.
Yeah. I just wish this sort of health and vibrancy for everyone. I really do. It was fun. So,
and I think that's what I was saying. That just reflects back to, when people come into the clinic, that's the vision I feel like they want for their lives, is to be able to play tag with their grandchildren in the park.
Or their kids.
That's why they come to us. Or their kids, that's what they want. That's what they see themselves doing. And that's the vision that they have. And that's what, with the vision we have for them when they come in to see us. And I think that's wonderful.
Or they want to be able to go out hiking and they don't want to have to stop and slow everybody down because they have to rest or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Right. They want freedom of mobility. They want, they want their bodies to run right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. So, okay. So that is the two things that I'm grateful for. The last question that I ask myself is, what am I looking forward to in this next year? And this year, it's an easy question to answer because there are two things I'm looking forward to. The first is helping more people achieve lasting health and vitality by helping more people keep the weight off. So I would encourage each one of you who is listening to this podcast to share this podcast. It might not necessarily be this particular episode, although it could be, but share the link to this podcast with a friend or relative. Someone that you love and care about, who you think would benefit from listening to it. We're not for everyone, right? But we have really important information on this podcast that can be helpful. And it's all totally free, right? So
yeah,
there's no cost to all this great advice. So the second thing that I'm looking forward to is more travel. So I feel like there's so much to catch up on since we weren't able to travel for so long with COVID. But now things are back in full swing and I can't wait to see more of the world. Doesn't that sound awesome?
I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
That's going to be wonderful. I can't wait to hear about your adventures.
Well, we're all going to be traveling a lot more. So yeah. It's nice to.
I'm going to be traveling too.
Yeah, exactly. So. And I think that, really learning how to travel without having, the vacation splurge mentality that we talked about a few weeks ago is really good.
Oh, yeah. That's me. There we go.
I've been
That's
talking with a lot of people about that, think about vacation splurge mentality and think about how much it can set you back.
Yep.
Yeah, just eat healthy while you're traveling. It's great. I was at a restaurant last night and I had a ceviche. Do you know what that is?
No, I do know what it is. I've never had it though.
Oh, it's delicious. It's like fish that gets cooked in acid. Like they put lime juice and lemon juice and stuff in it, and that's what cooks it.
Okay.
So they don't actually heat it up.
I'm going to have to try that someday.
And they put all kinds of wonderful spices in it and some avocado. And then I had a big bowl of...
It sounds great.
...of vegetables next to that. And I was like so satisfied. Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds really, really good.
This was a really, a wonderful, well-known restaurant in Cannon Beach. And that's what I had that was on the menu. And it was so delicious.
That sounds so good.
And so that was my vacation splurge. It was delicious. So...
Yum. That sounds really good.
I know. It was wonderful. Okay. So I want to recap what I recommend that everyone do sometime during their birthday week. Just some self-reflection and ask yourself these questions. The first question, do you like the way your life is going? And are there any changes that you're thinking you might want to make? The second question is, what is your proudest accomplishment for the last year? The third question is, what would you like to improve on in this next year? The fourth question, what are you most grateful for? And the fifth question, what are you most looking forward to in the next year? So ask yourself those questions and journal the answers. So write them down and see what shifts for you over the next year. And always remember that if you want help getting the weight off and keeping it off, we're here for you. So just go to journeybeyondweightloss.com. And, the best place to start is the Banish Belly Fat workshop that I have. It's a 70-minute workshop. It's got some little worksheets. It's got great information for you. You're going to learn everything you need to know. And it's just a whole new way of looking at weight loss by focusing on the belly fat, because that's
a great place to start
to get rid of. Yeah. All right. So I think that's all I have to say. Do you have any last minute things that you want to say, Marshall? Are we good to go?
No, just a happy birthday.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a different one for me this year, but I am really looking forward to it. And I'm happy to be turning 61. So, all right, everyone, have a great week and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, if you really want to lose weight and keep it off for good, your next step is to sign up for Dr. Angela's free weight loss course, where you're going to learn everything you need to get started on your weight loss journey the right way. Just head over to journeybeyondweightloss.com/free course to sign up. Also, it would be awesome if you could take a few moments and write a review on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you in Journey Beyond Weight Loss.